All right, so let's make a tied arc bridge using Grasshopper. Now, what is a tied arc bridge? It's basically an arc with a hanger to support the bridge. One actual bridge as a case study would be the Infinity Bridge in Stockton, right? Now we're going to make our bridge a little fancy, so it's not going to be straight, but a little curved. All right, so how do we make this bridge? So let's use this curve right here and just draw ourselves a little line, long line. All right. Now, first in Grasshopper that we want to do is create something to represent our curve. In this case, we're going to type in curve, right? Select our curve in Rhino and right-click the curve command on Grasshopper and set one curve. Therefore, when we select our curve in Grasshopper, it selects our line, right? Now, what we want to do next is divide our curve. So we're going to divide the command divide curve, right? Move this here, and now we have 10 counts. Now, Grasshopper will always start with 10. So what we want to do is change this a little, adjust it. Let's say 12. I think 12 will be all right. 12 or 20, 16. All right. Now we want to move our points into an arc shape. So if we were to just move our points like this, type in the move command, set our points as our geometry that we want to move. Again, the units will always be 10. So Z unit, we want our motion to be in the Z axis. And then we type in 10. Or actually, take that back. 10 to 50. Then all it's doing is that it's just moving this in a straight line, right? It's not arcing. So deleting the slider and keeping the Z unit, what we're going to do is make a graph. So a graph mapper, right? Now our graph mapper, we can make this into a parabola or we can make this into a sine. So in this case, since we're using the Infinity Bridge as a case study, right? I guess a quick case study, do graph types and we're going to do sine, right? Now we're going to move the points until to our liking. I'll say I'll have the left to be a little bit heavy and the right. All right. And then we're going to add our range. Type into command range. Now our range should have the same number as our divide curves. So that way when we connect them, they create a line. So in this case, our steps should also be our count. Now, watch as I plug this range into the graph mapper. It creates these red lines. These red lines are the same as our counts, right? So they are the same points as these. All right, and now we can just plug our graph into our Z unit. Now, one problem, the value is very minuscule. I'll show you why. We type in // we create the panel command. Move this here, and you can see these are all our Z units. Very small, very minuscule. We don't want this. So how do we solve this issue? What we're going to do is that we're going to multiply them. So if we type in the command astrofix, we get the multiplication command, right? Let's set this as our B unit, and then let's create a slider. 0, I'll say 0 to 400, right? There we go. Now we can plug this into our Z unit. We'll reset to 0. And if we create a panel, we can actually compare these values. Currently at 0. If I increase this, there you go. That's our arc. That's our sine arc. Cool. Now we're going to connect all these points to create a line. So how do we do that? So in Grasshopper, you type in the command line, look for this line, not the one on the bottom. And we're going to have a start and end point, right? So what Grasshopper does is that it takes the value of our divide curves, so these points, and it moved it into this command. Now these two commands are pretty much the same, so they're both points, right? Because the move command basically inherits the divide curve value, but all we did is change its location, right? So in this case, our move can go to our endpoint, and our divide curve can go to our start point. There you go, right? Now, if you want to make the commands or the script look a bit nicer, okay, you can add a double click on the line right here to create a relay, right? So therefore, it looks nicer. Or you can right click here on the name and look for wire display faint or wire display hidden. In this case, I'm going to use default. So therefore, when I go back, you can actually look at the command. All right. Now that we have our hangers, let's have our arc. Let's create our arc, right? So to create our arc, we're going to use the command interpolate. Interpolate. I'm going to look for the squiggly thing, right? Now our vertices will be our points, but it won't be the points on the bottom. It'll be the move points, right? So I'm going to connect our geometry to our vertices. There we go. They're all connected. Now we're going to do the command prep frame. What is prep frame? Prep frame is perpendicular frame, right? So if you go to help, it'll tell you this, it's a perpendicular frame. Currently our prep frame is not displaying, and the reason why is because we need to add a value for our parameter. So what you can do is type in /0 and set it like this. So therefore our prep frame spawns right there at the endpoint of our curve. Now, if I were to add a slider, a number slider, let's say 0 to 20, what parameter does is that it moves our prep frame away 3 units from the endpoint or the start point. Right? Now it's 20 units. Right? We don't want that. We just want it to start from 0, 0 or 0. So set this to 0. Perfect. And we're going to do the command rectangle. Now our rectangle is starting at our origin plane. We want to start on our prep frame. There you go. Our rectangle is right here. Now, one problem. Our prep frame is in the way. We don't want that. We don't want to see our prep frame. It gets in the way of seeing how wide our triangle is. So what we can do is click or select our prep frame, use the middle mouse button, click anywhere and select disable preview. Or what you can do is right click on the icon and click preview or check preview off. So therefore our prep frame is gone. Now our rectangle, let's add our X and Y. 6, 3, right? Now our rectangle is spawning at the corner, at its corner. If you want your rectangle to spawn in the midpoint of its midpoint, you had to create a domain. So we're going to do construct domain. Look for this command. And on our start or end domain, we're going to right click and we're going to add an expression. So one of these, the start or the end, has to have a negative x, and the other one has to have an x. Now there's a reason why. I'll show you. Let's connect these two. One more here. Now I'll show you why. If you were to double click anywhere on Grasshopper and type in / to create your panel and move your domain to the panel, you can see that the domain of my panel is -2, right? So I'm starting at -2, and it ends at 2. So therefore the unit is actually 4 units and not really 2. Right? That's what the domain does. And that's why our rectangle spawns at its midpoint or its center. It's perfect. Now, sometimes we don't want hard units. So what we can do is round up our units, right? So we don't want integers. We can just click floating point numbers. So what it will allow us to do is actually have more control over our rectangle dimensions. So let's round our numbers, make this thinner. There we go. Now, using the sweep command, type in sweep 1, we'll have our rectangle be our section, and we'll use our interpolate right here as our curve. So what we can do to make this look nicer a bit is double click on this point to create a relay. Move our relay to the top so it doesn't get in the way of our rectangle, and then move our curve to the relay. There we go. Now let's do the same thing for the line very similarly. We're going to use the command pipe. Our line right here, all these lines. So if we type in // you'll notice that all these lines are actually graphed, right? So let's move our lines to the curves and set our radius as not point, not, to, I'll say 5. Now, why did I add the 0 in my command? So that way I actually have rounded numbers. There we go. This will be my pipe or my hangers. All right. Now, what I also can do to organize my work is to select them, middle mouse button, and then select group. Now they're all grouped. I'm not going to be confused on what each of these commands do. If you want to, you can also click on a command, any command, right click into your group and select add to group. So now this is part of the group. I'm not going to do that for this one. So I can also remove it from the group. Now we constructed the top two, our hangers and our little arc right here. All right, group this as well. All right, now let's do the bottom. So we can do something very similar. We're going to do something very similar. I'm going to copy everything in this command so we don't have to start from scratch. Let's delete our interpolate and have our original curve to be in our prep frame. And also have our rail connect to our relay. And there you have it. What we also can do is create cap. So we can cap all the holes of our pipe, of our sweep 1, and of our other sweep 1. Right click and bake. Let's group them together. Let's disable all these. So let's hide preview. And then we can select our tick. Right, and this is what it looks like. All right, so now I'm going to show you guys how to have some fun with your hangers, right? So let's say you don't want your hangers to just go straight down, right? Here's another trick. What you can do is add a line right here, right? Let's disconnect our bottom points right here from our line. So in this case, we'll just delete this relay or disconnect from this relay, right? Let's create another curve command and have our new curve represent this one curve, right? Now let's divide our curve, divide curve, right? Let's set the counts the same as the count on the bottom, 16. And all we have to do is connect this point to the start point. There you go. Right, and I can hide this. All right. Now let's say you want to move them in a special way, right? move it side to side or close together towards the middle. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to do curve. You can do curve middle, right? So that's therefore on this curve, it'll create a midpoint. All right. Now this wouldn't really work best with a curve like this, right? But if their curve is actually a line, then this method should work. We'll do move. So what's going to happen is that we're going to move the midpoint in two directions. We're going to move it to the left and to the right, right? So one of them has to move in a negative motion. There we go. Oh, okay. Let's create an amplitude. All right, our amplitude, right? The vector will actually be our curve from here. Let's create another amplitude. There we go. And our midpoint will connect to our geometry and our move. Now, our amplitude, or the number, will say 0 to 400. 0 to 400. Right? So these are our points, and therefore it'll actually move in two directions. Right? Now let's connect these points together. Line, our start and end point. There we go. Now we can hide this. And we can hide this as well. And we can hide the points on the bottom. And let's hide this curve as well. Perfect. So now we can actually make this wider or shorter. Let's also hide this curve. There we go. All right. Now, we're going to do something. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to divide our curve. And let's set the count as equal to our divide count from the bottom. Perfect. Now it's 16. And then all we have to do is move our points to the start point. Now it's twisting like this. And the reason why it's twisting like this is because the point from the other end right here is trying to connect to the point to this end. So to fix this, all we have to do is adjust the list, right? So Grasshopper creates everything in a list, right? So our 0 is one of these ends right here. If we were to reverse them, so let's type reverse, there you go. The order is now reversed. All right. Now, what's cool about this is that if you were to make this wider, the hangers also get wider themselves, and if you make them shorter, they also get shorter themselves as well. So that's a neat trick you can use for your projects. And right now, I'll show you my commands. All right, now here's another cool thing that you can do. If you were to remove the count and replace it with number sliders, series, and a panel, and you move this, you connect this to your line, what you can do is do something like this. So let's create a start or a count, right? So we'll have 3 counts, okay? Your start basically indicates what number you want to start at. So let's say we move this to 1. All our numbers start at 1, okay? Our steps is basically how many you want to add to your start. So this is basically your n. So therefore it's 4. So we have four rows. We start at 1, and every time we go up, it adds 1. Every time we go up, it adds 2. So we start at 1, it adds 2, it adds 2, it adds 2. Every time we go up another one, it adds 3. Okay. Now, what we can do with this is we can go to our line and our start point. And our start point, we can flatten this value right here. All right. Let's give you a comparison. Right. So this is unflattened. This is flattened. Right. Let's do unflattened. Right. Let's keep adding all these points. And this is what you get. Notice how all these are connecting to one point. We add 3. This is what it looks like. If we want them to go to each one individually, we can flatten this. I'll give you an example. So it looks like this. Start 1. Let's increase our number slider. All right, that's up to you if you want to play around with it. Add 2, keep adding number slider. See? Now if we graph this, what it'll do is that it'll have all of these points connect to another point on the bottom. So if that's what you want, then this is what you'll get.